UK, we have a diverse culture for anything surrounding music, creative media, and most importantly, the arts. I'm Lufa Shaban, a local university student. Alongside my crew, Sammy and Elliot, will be investigating why the arts have had a defunding due to the COVID pandemic.
I'm Shani, and to go into more depth, in this documentary we're going to be talking about why the arts have been defunded and essentially forgotten about during this current pandemic.
Join me for a journey of creative controversy and find out how you can help keep the curtains from closing. It's currently January 2021, and with coronavirus still the topic on everybody's mind, the pandemic has affected people from all sorts of industries and background with no idea with what's to come next. However, the arts industry to have said they have suffered the most, with theatres being forced to close all the way back in March 2020 and not being open for the foreseeable future. We spoke to Joe, a producer at the Corby Cube Theatre, who gave us an insight as to how difficult it has been for theatre organisations to remain hopeful.
How has coronavirus affected the theatre? Obviously talking about the Corby Cube.
Yeah, so I suppose the Corby Cube, like every other venue in the country, when was it? Kind of middle of March, we got the sense that there was something quite seriously wrong, not just in the UK, but in the rest of the world. Corby Gang Show, they've been performing at the venue for the last 10 years, and they were like, look, this is a bit shaky. We have young people in the group. We're not sure if we can go ahead. So had a kind of a crisis meeting a day before they were due to get in and start the show about kind of what do we do now? We have 1,000 tickets sold for the show. Are we going to just cancel? It's kind of unprecedented in the theatre industry that you cancel a show. It's like, the show must go on. The government's 1.57 billion cash injection for arts organisations was quite good and quite unprecedented compared to other countries. In fairness, it was quite a big injection of cash. But I think the challenge with that injection of cash is making sure that it goes to support the whole sector as a whole. So I suppose the emphasis on that fund so far has been on kind of established organisations, as in the kind of venues and the established organisations that are kind of known to the Arts Council that kind of prop up the sector. But I suppose the important thing to bear in mind is that it isn't just venues that make up the arts sector. It's all the people who work in those venues. It's all the freelance artists. It's all the theatre makers, it's all the producers who work maybe, out of their own pocket or with their own funds. And all that infrastructure needs to be supported as well.
Thinking about all the empty theatres gave me the feeling that this is almost impossible to believe that this is what a virus has caused. It's a very sad time for theatres and all remaining arts.
We were able to speak to a few people who have been affected by COVID personally. Not only has the arts industry been struck by the virus, but also musicians. We spoke to local band The Touch about restrictions in the music industry at the moment, and this is what they had to say.
In what way has COVID affected you guys' career as like a whole?
In terms of obviously, well, no, okay. So obviously it has sort of stunted the band's progress, Yeah. But in terms of obviously my I'm fortunate enough to still be working, and so it hasn't really stopped my personal but as a band, yeah, it's definitely stopped some things. I think, we were probably planning on having possibly 2 or 3 more songs out by this point, but it's been difficult to get in the studio, and this gigging is a pain.
Yeah, I think more people are aware of how bad the music industry is suffered because of COVID. Beforehand, everyone expected everything from a musician for little to nothing because it wasn't a proper job. It's not a stable income. You're all bohemians and rapscallions. But now that COVID's happened, people are more aware that the music industry has been affected. Whether that means once restrictions are lifted, there'll be a big resurgence and a comeback, potentially, to be all up in the air at the minute until everyone is cured.
The thing with the music industry is that local artists and small artists have felt this pandemic an awful lot more than the large artists around the world. When you look at Universal Music, which is the biggest recorded music company in the world, 80% of their income comes from streaming.
Yeah.
The large artists that are getting millions and millions of streams each week aren't the people who are having the issues.
Definitely, it's. I don't feel the government has supported musicians who don't have other income.
Not only have creative careers been left in the dark, but students have been left with anxiety and stress about lockdown at home. With online learning, can creative people learn to the best of their abilities? We spoke to performing arts lecturers at Tresham College.
How has COVID affected your students?
So, the first and most important thing to us is the students' mental well-being, which has taken a massive knock because they're having to work from home. And it hasn't been 100% contact time, as you guys know. So they've had maybe 75% in class, 25% at home, which obviously that also has an effect on what they're learning. And you can't learn all of performing arts in your bedroom and just, sat watching somebody on the webcam. It's very physical and very active.
What are your hopes for the future?
I hope that we, as a nation, actually recognise how important the arts is and how it's got us through. I really hope that, and that when we start to rebuild things, when the country has started to kind of get back on its feet, then that will be kind of looked at in terms of it's something that got us through and that we need and is important.
Since January, we have been able to go back into the college and film some footage of the students in person, with all restrictions in place, doing what they do best.
I would definitely say that COVID has affected my enjoyment of my course. I was halfway through my second year when the pandemic hit and we had to go into lockdown, and now I'm halfway through my third year, and it's just affected everything so much.
It's taken away a lot of the practical aspects of my course, which means I feel like I've made less progress practically.
I think it's been really, really hard to find the motivation and determination to do my work at home.
We don't have that schedule, and that schedule really can help affect the way you're in your creativity and your enjoyment of everything that you're doing at the moment.
I want to do practical, and it's the first part of the course it was a bit dull because it was just all online.
It's quite a big shift, and it's quite hard to adapt to that quick enough for your workload not to suffer.
When I'm not around creative people, I'm not in creative spaces, I find it quite difficult to work.
I just feel like it's affected my motivation massively, especially in the second and third lockdown. I was creating stuff before, but I haven't really created anything since.
I think that when you're in lockdown, you just have the same scenery all the time, and it's quite uninspiring.
It makes the creative side of life a lot trickier, and it makes focusing on work and being creative and stuff like that, it makes it a lot harder.
I do think that the arts will recover from the pandemic, and I think, if anything, this has shown people just how important the arts are.
You read a book, that's someone creative. You watch a film or TV series and there are actors in there and a whole creative team behind that. And the arts are so, so, so important. Listening to music, which people do daily, listen to the radio, all of that stuff are from the arts.
Considering there hasn't been much over lockdown, I feel it's going to have a big comeback.
I think there'll just be a big boom as soon as everything opens.
So I think when they do come back, they'll come back at full steam ahead with a bang and make it the best it's been in a very, very long time.
Filmmaker and documentary enthusiast Paul Stringer is hopeful that the industry can make a comeback in the future.
Although it's felt long, it's been a year, probably going to be a year and a half, maybe nearly 2 years of pandemic era sort of filmmaking and stuff. But there will always be a need for media, and there will always be a need for content, and even more so now where people have realised that there's a whole sort of world of digital that a lot of businesses and a lot of companies and a lot of practitioners just wasn't using effectively, and especially for around accessibility needs and stuff, people that couldn't physically attend theatre spaces or cinemas or had access needs of that nature have been calling out for stuff to be live streamed and broadcast online for years and years and years. And it's only when a pandemic has hit that people have realized that actually we do need to have more of a digital presence. So I actually think that the media industry in particular will come back stronger, and it will be bigger, and I think you might even get a mini sort of boom, and that's good. That's a good thing. Yeah, absolutely encourage younger people to get into the arts and into the media industry, creative industries, for a number of reasons. I mean, you know, you could argue that this year has been detrimental to it, and I see that, but this has only been a year, only going to be 2 years. I've been working in media for nearly 8 years now, which even that's quite a short amount of time. So it's a blip. It's a small, you know, what feels like a long time, but it's a small time in sort of the career of an artist. And the fact is that we're going to need more storytellers, we need more artists, we need more media makers, we need more perspectives on things. If anything, now is a great time to get into it. You know, it's a great time to start producing content and telling stories. And, you know, I think that we'll look back at this time as a time where people kind of either sort of got through it, which is good, obviously, but also people will have sort of excelled, and they would have found like their niche, their thing that they love to do, and push that. So yeah, we need, like, we will never not need people and perspectives. So more than ever, get into the arts and media, and start telling those stories.
People have been debating that the arts is not something that people should just forget or move on from, but it is something that should bring this country together more than ever. We spoke to local MP Philip Holloway from Kettering to discuss this topic.
Do I think that the decline in the arts is something that needs to be addressed? Yes, absolutely. The arts and culture sector is very important for people's well-being. We're blessed in this country with very many talented actors and artists and musicians, and really there's a lot of what life is about. You know, without arts and culture, our lives would be really very dull. So it is very important that it comes back strongly after the pandemic. Yes. Is it possible for creative people to stay positive during these disruptive times? Yes, it's certainly possible. I mean, artistic people tend to have strong imaginations, and I think that helps overcome difficulties and adversities.
Rishi Sunak has said that he cannot guarantee that all creative people will be doing what they were doing before the pandemic hit. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think he's just being honest. You know, the government can't guarantee that. The government has provided a huge amount of financial support to very many people. But the government itself can't guarantee that everyone will be able to go back to the employment that they had before. I mean, just to give you a flavour of the local economic impact of the pandemic. So in the borough of Kettering, we've got more or less 100,000 people living here, exactly, of all ages, in the borough of Kettering. Very crudely, comparing the health impact to the economic impact, 215 people have died and 2,000 people have lost their jobs. So for every person who's died of COVID in the borough, 10 people have lost their jobs. And 100 people have taken a 20% pay cut. So that's the scale of the local impact over the last 12 months. Do I believe the arts industry has got a future? Absolutely. I don't see why, you know, it shouldn't bounce back strongly. I mean, people are desperate to go and see shows, performances, listen to music, go to exhibitions, museums, enjoy all sorts of cultural activities. You know, people have been starved of that over the last 12 months, and people are fed up at looking at the television. So I think the art sector could have a very, very strong second half of the year, as all this pent up artistic talent is released.
And maybe there is hope. There's been recent news that Mr. Sunak has given more money to the TV and film industry.
What are your current thoughts about the funding towards the arts?
I work in film, so I'm the head of partnerships at Flatpack Festival. So Flatpack's a mobile arts organisation which exists to show amazing work, bring people together and develop new ideas. And we love film, in all shapes and sizes. And every Maybank holiday you can find us taking over spaces across Birmingham, although the last 2 years it's been virtual spaces, with our annual festival. And throughout the year we pop up all over the place with everything from kind of family activities to al fresco horror. But we're also co-lead of Film Hub Midlands, which is a BFI funded project to support film exhibitions. So, my area of expertise is in the sort of film area. So in regards to funding towards that, the Cultural Recovery Fund was a 1.57 billion fund that was set up to tackle the crisis facing cultural organisations and heritage sites. And I think, that has been vital to keeping many organisations afloat during this time.
Do you think the festival will be more successful in the future now that the 4-step plan is in place?
It's really hard to say what the future is going to hold. I certainly hope that audiences will be, as I said, raring to get back out there and get to physical events when the time is right. And we're certainly in the process of planning lots of special events for later in the year, so kind of a bit of an extended festival. So we'll have stuff popping up over the summer and in September, so that we can welcome audiences back with a bang.
I think we've got a great arts industry in this country. We've got lots of very talented, artistic and creative people. And it's one of the strengths of our nation. And it's part of what makes life worth living. And we've got a lot of locally very talented people as well. So I'm actually optimistic about the future when we come out of COVID, because people have been starved of arts and culture for a year, and people are going to want to go out and listen to musicians and see plays and go to exhibitions and all the things that we used to just take for granted. But I think people will value them more given the year we've just gone through. So I think the arts and creative sectors are very, very important for all of us, locally and nationally.
With all the interviews and people involved, us as a group think that it's fair to say that the arts have been abandoned towards the end of last year and not given enough support during the current pandemic. However, only recently has the government put a hold on our misery and given the TV and film industry more funding. The theatre industry is still hopeful that it will receive more support in the future.
More than ever this year, people have turned to creative use to try and pass the time. Whether that was watching a new series on Netflix that has multiple creative jobs behind the scenes, singing, listening to music, watching films, joining in with the latest fashion trends, gaming, listening to your local radio shows, and even taking up a new creative hobby. People have been turning to the arts when in need. It's a way to escape. A year on, and things are certainly looking a lot brighter.
So let's get the cameras rolling again.
Lights, camera,
action! Yay!